What's up, guys? We're back with part 2 of the no prep build. I'm gonna be throwing the chassis on there today. There's a part number there. Check it out. Traxxas LCG kit. We are using a Bandit, so there might be a couple screws that you're gonna need to pick up afterward. The ones I know of right out of the bat are to hold the nerf bars on. You're just gonna need some basic 3x10 button screws. Just because the kit's 4/ and obviously the Bandit doesn't have nerf bars. But anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead and start taking it apart. I'll probably try to point out some things for you guys while I'm doing it. It's not so much a how-to, is just inviting you along while I do it. I'm gonna disconnect the motor, pull out the wing. This thing is basically just in here with pressure, so you kind of just gotta rip it out. Just kind of sitting some bent prongs in there, so we're not gonna need the body. You can sell that one if you want, make back a little bit of money there. So right now I'm just disconnecting the rear end and bolting it on. Then I'm gonna disconnect the front end, bolt it on, and then migrate the electronics over. Do it in sections. This is what I find the best when I'm working on cars. Otherwise, if you take everything apart and try to put it on one car, you might confuse yourself. Obviously, a drill makes all the difference. Just so you guys can see it, I'm using a DeWalt DCF 610. Awesome drill. If you guys are looking for some. So I just removed all the screws in the bottom of the tranny there. Now there's 4 screws. I guess it's really only 2 screws on the front of the shock tower. I'll hold it to the chassis. So I'm just taking those out. And the ones in front of the shock tower. Keep in mind, guys, I haven't rehearsed this. I've taken trannies out quite a few times, but I might mess up a little bit here while I'm doing it. At this point, it's loose. It's basically just this rear bracket that's holding it on. If you wiggle it enough, you can definitely get it off. I'm just gonna take the rear bracket off. I'll just put it on later. So with those crazy long screws, I'm just gonna throw them aside, just so I don't have to wrench on it in the video. Knocking over my screws over here. Three screws that hold this rear piece on. And now our tranny should come out a little more freely. You gotta kind of peel back on this chassis a little bit. It kind of sits in the grooves. We got our whole rear end out. I'm gonna set that aside, get our chassis. You can see there's kind of some grooves here. You gotta kind of click it into it. Like that. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt down the rear end. Got the 2 3mm screws on the top here. And 4 of the countersunk 4mm screws. Don't over tighten, don't strip them out. This drill does have a clutch on it, but I've used it so much, I can just feel it. Alright, so we got our rear end on there. With those 2 more that were up in front of the shock tower, we can put back in. Just go in front of the tower here. Come on. Put a little pressure on it, it's not quite lined up. attached. Put that back aside, bring the front end back over. Front end is definitely a little more complicated with the steering involved, so definitely take your time. I'm going to go ahead and basically have to take off this top deck to get to the steering underneath, and then these 3 screws on the bottom. Basically these 3 screws here and these 2 on top hold the front end on, and then we have to remove the steering and put it on this new bottom plate that comes with the chassis conversion. So just take your time with this one. It can get a little confusing sometimes. Take out the 3 on the bottom. And that front end's pretty loose, but it's still held in with the steering. So we're going to remove this top piece. Should come off. I don't know, the only thing holding us to the chassis is our servo wire. So I'm going to actually take this box right off. I probably am not even going to use the box in my drag build, just because I don't intend on ever using this car in the water. And we just got our antenna, which just pulls in there. So at this point we got everything removed from the chassis here. So we have to disconnect, we have to take out our servo and the steering rack and put it in, our new piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the servo. It's just a 1 screw in the center horn there. Don't lose the little insert there if yours popped off. I'm going to take off the 2 screws in the rack here. A lot of washers in these and shims, so be careful about pulling this apart. Don't lose anything. Some of these Teflon washers and stuff. If you do have a metal rack, which we will probably install in the future, now would be the time to install that. Traxxas makes a pretty nice one that comes with the bearings already. These cars just come stock with brass bushings. I don't know if you can see that. We got more washers on the bottom here. So that's the whole front end disconnected. I'm just going to transfer it right over to the new one. The Teflon washer that goes on first on each side. Slide our new, our old steering system onto our new plate. A little stiff, make sure you slide them on evenly. Otherwise should go on pretty good. Now at this point, the kit does come with different screws. It doesn't use these long ones anymore. It would use the 2 shorter cap heads, but use the same washers. I'm just didn't really reference it before, but the chassis kit does come with some nice little instructions here. If you need to see something, I do have them off to the side here. Never hurts. You just slide on the metal washer. Teflon washer goes on top. Get those started. Put them both in. Tighten these down. Careful when you're tightening these down. If you tighten them too much, the steering gets super stiff. You see mine very stiff. So definitely don't crank these down. What I usually do is tighten them down. You can use the drill, but then I go back with a hand tool and I just back them off a hair until I get the steering flowing freely again the way I want it. And of course, if you're using bearings, it'll definitely be a lot more smooth. But pretty smooth there. But if you crank them down, you're going to overwork your servo and run the possibility of just burning it out pretty quickly. So that's the front end, almost attached. We got the steering cranks in there. So now we're going to just attach the front end with the 3 screws underneath. Those are three of the shorter countersunk screws we pulled out of the front end. The 2 longer ones go up top. Well, they did go up top. The new chassis is a little different. All right, put those in. All right, so we got our front end together there. So now we got to get our servo out of here. There is 4 panhead screws that hold the servo in. Just like that, comes out. We don't need that guy anymore. You can put that in your bin of spare parts. Now the servo is going to sit in here. Now there's different mounting positions in this kit for different servos. I'm running this just the stock servo saver for now. Let's see if I can bring it up. If you see, there's different holes here. If you look in your book, the instruction you come with, if you're going to run a solid straight horn, it wants you to use the lower mounting holes. If you're using the servo saver, it wants you to use the upper ones. And obviously, if you're putting in an upgraded servo, you may have to use the set of holes that works for you. So I'm going to put them in the upper holes because I'm just using the stock equipment right now. So I'm just putting those 4 screws back in. Don't over tighten them, break the ears on the servo. If you're not really comfortable with a drill, probably a good time to use a hand tool or use a clutch on your drill. There we go. So I just got the servo back in, those 4 bolts. I'm going to put this back on so the wheels are straight. At this point, it wouldn't be a bad idea just to leave it off. I'm just going to kind of put it back on loosely, just so I don't lose the little screw. But if you're ever changing out to a different servo, or even if you bump this one and knocked it off center, you're going to have to recenter it. So I'm just kind of leaving that in there. It's a little bit loose. We'll check it once we have power to the car. So just keep that in mind at this step. So now I'm just going to take the receiver out of this box because you have to run the cord for the servo up through the hole, and you're going to have to take it out. I'm not going to use the box. I'm just going to stick my receiver right to the chassis. For this particular build, there's really no point in me running a receiver box. So you'll just have a spare receiver box. Keep it for your scale trucks. Ooh, 2 millimeter. At this point, I'm gonna unplug everything. Speed control I'm going to set off to the side for now. You just got a receiver. They just come taped in the box from Traxxas. So you just got to get a flathead and kind of pry it out. Just be careful. Sometimes they can put them in there really good. You might have to work it from a couple ends like I'm having to do. There we go. Just taped in there, so don't be scared. Just be careful you don't split it in half or crack this case. So I'm just going to set this. It's actually still a little sticky, so I'm just going to set it right in the chassis for now. Throw our box aside. keep that. We can use that for another project. Alright, so we got our front end and our chassis. The servo wire here has to come up through this hole. Just start feeding that up through. And the chassis should more or less fall where it needs to. Goes between the shock towers and mounts these two holes, this hole, and two back here. They do give you screws in the kit. You are gonna have to grab two screws up for the front here, which I didn't grab because the slash comes with those screws. The Rustler doesn't use his countersunk screws in the front like we had here. So you're gonna have to grab a couple more. I believe this is 4x12 for the front end. I'm just gonna throw the ones in that it came with. It'll be enough to hold it together for now. But do take note of that. Put a couple screws in, just make sure nothing's getting pinched or bind. Looking all right, everything's sitting flush. So I'm just gonna throw that last one in. All right. Basically now we just have to install a couple pieces on our chassis. The kit does come with different springs too for the front. They're a little stiffer than the stock ones. I may use them, I'm not sure. I'm just gonna leave the stock ones on there for now. I may even lower it down and maybe put them in the back, but eventually we're gonna change these shocks out for something different. So for this video, I'm not gonna use those stock springs. I'm just gonna leave the stock springs on it for now, but I'll probably end up putting them in the back. So basically all we have left is the speed control, nerf bars, and the battery strap. So the speed control, just Traxxas, so you should be able to just bolt that right back down in the chassis. No tape. Just like so. Feed our motor wires back through. The receiver, I'm just going to leave on this side. Basically, still pretty sticky with the tape on there. I'm just going to leave it like that. If you're using your own radio at this point, you would just throw that in there. I'm just going to rock the Traxxas one for now. It does fit just barely between these grooves. It's still just got the factory tape on it, and it's actually in there pretty good, but you may have to retape it. We're going to run the wiring. There's a groove in the center here. I'll show you in a second. I can just run it through. Remember, 1 to turn, 2 to burn. This is speed control, channel 2. Servo, channel 1. There's 2 channel 1s, so keep that in mind. You got to skip one for the speed control there. Of course, I'll come in and clean that wiring up a little bit. That's basically what we got there. You guys can see that well. So more or less, the chassis conversion is installed. We just got a couple more things to throw on it. Put the nerf bars on. Kind of clip into the side and then screw down through the top. Help protect our body a little bit. I suppose these are optional, whether you want to run them or not. It's up to you. Keep the body from tucking in a little bit. Don't really add too much weight. So that's that for the most part. We just got the battery strap setup left. Foam blocks. Comes with the little, I don't even know what you would call that. I guess the little holder for the battery strap, which you gotta thread into the chassis, which I believe is a 5.5. Yeah. 5.5 nut driver. Should have made the threads really long on these things. Kind of orient it the way you want it. I want the pin to go in sideways. Uh-oh, there we go. So give it one more turn here. Like that. You're just threading that in. I've made it so the hole goes this way. It's just how I'm used to it. Oh, we forgot the last piece. We gotta put the the holder in for the back of the battery. Got a little excited there. This just slides in behind the shock tower here. Got 2 countersunk screws, which should be supplied right here. Dropped it in there. Everybody drops screws. Can't quite see the hole here. There we go. Alright, so we just installed the battery strap holder in the back and the front. Now the strap should go right in, and we can pin it. So at this point, if you're running a different battery besides 2-cell, we're setting this up for the 2-cell class, so this is perfect for us. You can buy the Traxxas extended battery mount set for the /2-wheel drive. And that would allow you to run a thicker 3-cell. But for today, we have the chassis kit installed on our Bandit VXL. Obviously, we just got to come in and clean up some of the wiring here. I'm just going to fold up the antenna and leave it inside the car. We're just using it for drag, so that's 132 feet plus some shutdown, so we should have plenty of range without this sticking out the top. So I'm just going to coil all these up together, maybe shrink with some tubing, clean it up a little bit. We're going to go ahead and throw our rear piece back on here. We're going to need that for our wheelie bar setup, which we'll throw on here. Our rear motor guard back on. This is what our wheelie bar is going to mount to. Alright guys, so we got the chassis kit installed, all back together. So all we're doing for this video was just the chassis conversion. Next video, part 3, will be adding the wheelie bar, and we're going to show you the tire setup we're going with. After that, we're going to do the body mounts and the body that we're going to go with. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next part.